On today's episode of Cause or No Cause, we want to talk about the case of the not social isolating nanny. My name is Erin Brandt, and I'm a lawyer with Kent Employment Law.
And I'm Kim Darling, also a lawyer at Kent Employment Law in our Kelowna office.
And this issue came up where a family had recruited a nanny, and it was a condition of her employment that she move in with them and self-isolate. And it's my understanding that the nanny agreed to self-isolate with the family. But about a week ago, for the long weekend, she asked for permission to go stay with her extended family, like her sister and her nephews or something like that. And this family was not necessarily, very strictly self-isolating. And so it sounds like there's a lot of hoopla around whether the nanny should be allowed to leave this self-isolating employment position and go see her own friends and family, or whether it's the nanny who is totally out to lunch um, by putting the family that she worked for at risk when they specifically asked her not to. And so, Kim, what do you think about this?
I think we have a really interesting confluence of strict contract law, a global pandemic, and people just not knowing what on earth they're supposed to do in these situations. So from a strictly contract point of view, if that was in fact the case where a person was hired on an express condition that they would self-isolate with a family and the nanny wants to break that condition, then I think, yeah, you have an argument that would be cause for dismissal if they break that condition. I think, though, that that's probably a rare scenario and has only come up for people who've been hired in the last, 6 to 8 weeks, because before that, almost certainly no one had that kind of condition in their contract.
No, I mean, it sounds crazy, right? Like, you must stay in our house and you must never leave, right? Like, that sounds totally archaic.
It sounds like slavery, right?
And slavery.
In no other context would this ever be okay, which is where I think we find ourselves in such strange times right now, where most of us would think that if you have someone in your home, that's a perfectly acceptable thing to ask of them right now. It's probably not going to be a perfectly acceptable thing for 10 years from now, but for right now, yeah. And if you agree to those terms and you want to break them, I think that you do have a case for cause for dismissal.
I mean, I guess there's a lot of context here. Why is the family so strict about self-isolation? Is there somebody who's immunocompromised in their home that if the nanny were to leave, that it could be a threat to life? I mean, it really could be a true fundamental term of the contract to ask the nanny to self-isolate. But on the other hand, maybe the family is like totally overreacting. And is it really, the family is self-isolating with their family unit, right, with their spouse and their children, and to ask a total stranger to come into, to join your family and, not have any connection with her own friends or family for an extended period of time. I mean, that could be a little bit abusive to some.
It could be. It really could be. And that's where I think that we have to apply what does our common sense tell us needs to happen. It doesn't necessarily have to be an all or nothing proposition, because you have, on the one hand, this is someone that you are trusting with your children, right? You have to trust that they are going to take care of your children when you're not there and you're not available. So that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect is, if this person really just needs a break, they need to get away from like I need to get away from my kids regularly. If they just need to get away, have a break, then why does it necessarily have to be all or nothing? Couldn't you have an unpaid leave that follows their break in self-isolation, where they then self-isolate before they come back to work? Maybe that's a compromise.
Yeah, and how long is this relationship? Like, was this job intended to only last 2 months until the daycares reopen, or the kids go back to school, or is this a really long-term relationship? And if it was meant to be a short-term position, then it may be more reasonable to tell the nanny, no, you can't leave. Like, you're only supposed to be here for a month. Like, can you please stick it out? But if this is like a 5-year nanny relationship and the nanny's just asking for like a week off or a vacation, maybe there's a way, like you said, to structure it so that the nanny can have a period of isolation before coming back into your home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also, if this is a longer term relationship, and you're starting to have these kind of battles and struggles, I think you need to ask yourself whether this is really the person that you trust going forward. Like, is there actually something more at play here in the relationship where you need to look at, is this still a right fit for all of us? And again, then that's a hard conversation to have. And it might just be that the self-isolation is the trigger for having that conversation, but it doesn't, again, have to be an all or nothing proposition. You can work with people over time as things change.
Yeah, and we do want to urge compassion. This is a very difficult time for everyone. This is a very difficult scenario. And if it turns out that it is no longer the right fit, the right thing to do might be to pay the nanny a little bit of severance in order to help her bridge to new employment.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, just be compassionate human beings and use your common sense, right? That's quite often the answer to a lot of these questions.
Anyways, we would love to hear your thoughts. Should this family fire this nanny? Should this nanny quit in a storm of anger? Let us know what you think, and join us next time for more Cause or No Cause.